Hello and welcome to the fifth installment of Meet Minnesota Music. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicole Radetich, Ensemble Program Manager in the School of Music at the University of Minnesota. My co-host tonight is Natalie Wilson.
Hi, I'm Natalie Wilson and I'm the Recruitment and Events Coordinator at the School of Music.
So we just have a few announcements and then we'll get started. The conversation tonight is planned for 1 hour. To ask a question, you just use the Q&A function in the webinar feature at the bottom of the screen. If there's any questions that we don't answer tonight, we can follow up via email. This webinar is being recorded and we'll post the video to the School of Music YouTube channel. Natalie, do you want to introduce the panel?
Absolutely. So we're really excited to have each and every one of you with us tonight. I'm just going to go down the line and sort of introduce everybody. First, I'd love to introduce Maestro Mark Russell Smith.
Good evening, everybody. How's it going?
Excellent. And then we also have David Carrillo.
Good to see you all.
Sunny Lim.
Hello, my name is Sunny. I'm a student at the University of Minnesota. I'm a senior studying accounting at Carlson School of Management, and I play the violin and I'm in the campus orchestra.
Awesome. And David, I'm sorry, I kind of skipped over your introduction there. If you could just tell us your major, your program, and
Sorry, yeah. I'm doing my master's in orchestral conducting, and I'm also a violinist and taking violin lessons. I did my undergrad here at the U of M actually, and I am enjoying my fifth year. Currently the craziest semester, but very very happy to be here.
Excellent. And Elise Bernstein.
Yeah, I'm Elise. I'm a junior at the U this year. My major is environmental science, policy, and management. I play the cello and I'm also in campus orchestra.
Awesome. And finally, we have Claire.
Hi, everybody. My name's Claire. I play the clarinet in the University Symphony Orchestra. I'm majoring in music and I'm minoring in horticulture and fisheries, wildlife, and conservation.
Awesome. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. So what we're going to do is sort of go by ensemble, and we're going to start with the University Symphony Orchestra. So this is one of the ensembles where an audition is required. It's a select ensemble of students who are primarily music majors. The orchestra rehearses and performs the finest orchestral literature available, from well-known works to premieres of new compositions. Under normal circumstances, the orchestra performs 4 to 6 concerts per year, in addition to working with the University Opera Theater on 2 productions a year. Admission is based on the audition, and it typically meets 1:25 to 3:20 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in fall 2020, the format is in person or online. So Maestro, I'd love to ask you about your planning for University Symphony Orchestra this term. We know it was a unique year for academic planning, to say the least.
Right. So we have two, we have the in-person option and we have the online only option. I'll speak mainly about the in-person option because it's been actually, I think, a really great experience, and the people who have chosen to come in person, I think, have had a really rich experience. Because, of course, of COVID protocols, and because you have to keep social distancing, and their rooms are only so big, rehearsal rooms are only so big, and the places where we rehearse and play are only so big, and so that just limits the number of musicians that can meet at one time. And so in regular times, the orchestra can be between 70 and 90 players, depending on which composer and what the repertoire is. Mm-hmm. But we can't obviously fit that many in. But lucky for us, lucky for the USO especially, there's just a wealth of great chamber orchestra repertoire and repertoire for strings only, or repertoire for a small number of strings and a handful of winds. There's really great long-standing repertoire from all of the eras that kind of fit that category. And so this year we've been able to explore that. Usually the USO is a big entity, and we play pieces, with 60 or more, pretty regularly. And it's kind of the exception because we don't want to exclude students. It's kind of the exception when we do smaller repertoire. But now this gives us a chance to explore, string pieces, to explore. We're doing a Stravinsky piece, Dunbar Notes, which is kind of like a Brandenburg concerto size orchestra. So maybe, 15 players or so. So it allows us the opportunity to explore these kind of corners of the repertoire that we wouldn't otherwise, and while still playing together and still, learning ensemble skills and learning all those things that you'd learn in the big orchestra. It's different for sure. I mean, there's no doubt it's different, but it's still, I think, very, very rich, and again, gives us an opportunity to do stuff we wouldn't normally do.
That's really great. David, you were speaking earlier about the COVID precautions that everyone has been taking at the School of Music, and we just wanted to take a moment to sort of go over what sort of precautions are happening at the School of Music.
Mm-hmm. So, as you can imagine, it's we all take this very seriously, and the safety of everybody involved goes first,
Mm-hmm.
and the social distancing, 6 feet between people that are wearing masks normally, is what's expected. But for wind players, it's particularly unique. I think Claire can also speak to this, like how they're wearing, masks that like open up for the instrument to be able to fit, and the instruments themselves have bags, and and for flutes they're even using like a face shield and a bandana, and the flute has a bag. So it's pretty impressive to see.
Mm-hmm.
And also because the aerosols that are spread stay in the room for a certain amount of time, we have to rehearse for 30 minutes at a time, which is a tricky thing to do, but somehow we've actually managed pretty well, I would say. And so we move from one large room to the next, and one of these rehearsals, even we even rehearsed outside, and we had great acoustics, and it was beautiful. I think everybody enjoyed it. A couple pages were but it's been a transition period, and I think we're getting much better at being agile and being and being flexible with everything. But yeah,
Right, and it's all, I mean, I think the point is it's all really carefully considered, with university policy and the kind of specifics involved with instruments, and I mean, it's really, it's very carefully done and carefully considered, and we've done very, very well. We've given 3 concerts, and I mean, occasionally a piece can't go on because of somebody getting sick, but I mean, the average is pretty darn good, I think, considering.
Yeah.
And maybe Claire, you want to speak to, like, I mean, what the woodwind things are like, or maybe you don't want to. I don't know.
Yeah, so just with the bags and the masks, it really depends on each instrument, but for wind instruments, woodwinds especially, we have a complete bag that's over the whole instrument, with holes for hands to go in, as well as a mask that has a flap or a zipper or something that can close up for when we're not playing. And yeah, the bags have been a challenge at times, but after some adjustments, we've found ways to make them work, creative ways to make them work. And I think I could speak for most people and say that we've gotten used to it, and yeah, it's been a challenge, but we're still able to play safely together.
Well, and I think, like, certainly for high school students, I mean, if the ones who are meeting in person, the ones where there are music programs, instrumental programs meeting, I mean, as far as I know, they're almost all doing exactly this. I mean,
Right.
The bags and bell covers, and I mean, I think if there are high school musicians out there, they're probably used to, or it's not news, or they're used to that, for better or for worse, so, and it's for the better health wise, needless to say. I mean, it doesn't help a flute project, but you know, what can you say? You know, there are things that are more important than that, you know, so.
Absolutely. So Maestro, I'd love it if you could describe your repertoire this semester. I know you went over it a little bit talking about the chamber pieces that you have been doing, but how was your decision-making process sort of informed, and how did it go? Because we're almost at the end of our in-person session.
Well, it went well. You know, so normally what happens is we have what's called a project-based schedule. So when the orchestra, the university orchestra and the university wind ensemble share players, like the wind players for my orchestra are the same as for Dr. Trinan's wind ensemble. And so in normal times, those two groups do not meet at the same time. So there'd be like a 3-week block, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where the orchestra rehearses. And so players are only working on that orchestra music or only rehearsing that orchestra music. And then there'll be a 3-week block where there's wind ensemble music and the strings do something else. You know, the strings of the USO do something else. So we decided, given space and given all the kind of new challenges, we decided to kind of combine forces, given the fact that we were creating lots of smaller ensembles.
Sure.
And so, God, I can't even remember back to the first concert. David, what was on the first concert? Was that the Mozart? No.
We did a Bartok Divertimento.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Duh. Okay. So the first concert was, there's, you know, of course, for strings only repertoire, there's, you know, just an incredible amount from which to choose. And we chose the Bartok Divertimento, which is, you know, a piece written in 1940. And, you know, if you know Bartok, it's like 20th century modern, but, you know, harkens back to folk music and, you know, is, I mean, really one of the great voices of the 20th century. So we were able to do that piece. Then given the winds that we had, the wind contingent that we had, for the second concert, we did a Mozart symphony that had 2 flutes and 2 horns and strings. So all the strings are employed and given Mozart's instrumentation for that, 2 flutes and 2. So again, we have something 20th century, and then we have classical style in Mozart. And so there are all sorts of things to learn about playing both those styles, you know. And now I talked about the Stravinsky a little bit. We're also doing 2 string pieces, a beautiful piece by African-American composer called Lyric for Strings, George Walker, Pulitzer Prize winning, beautiful, lush, romantic piece. And then we're doing a Bach air. So again, a little, some Baroque, so we can have some Baroque style. I really try to, you know, have as many styles because, you know, there's a lot to learn. You know, you play Mozart differently than you play Bach, then you play differently than you play Bartok and Stravinsky. I mean, each one of these composers has their own style. And so there's a lot of knowledge to impart, I think. And so I really was intentional about trying to have lots of diversity, era-wise and composer-wise, you know, to give as rich an experience to as many students as I could.
Absolutely. And on that same note, can you talk a little bit about the online track and sort of what the folks who weren't able to meet in person were participating in?
Right. So we have, I mean, there are a number of components with that, like too many to go into, but there's a Friday series where we bring in people, well, we have different things, you know, we have different focus. We bring in composers from the outside, you know, people from the music industry, you know, all sorts of kind of obviously very, you know, related, you know, people, again, these composers and things. I gave a couple lectures about different things that people pretended to be interested in, I guess. And no, they were very good. They were very attentive. But so there's that whole series. And then there's some projects, some video projects, some recording projects that the students turn in and that Dr. Trinan and I grade as part, you know, because obviously it's important that there's a hands-on aspect of the class as well. And so they were, you know, the online only students were expected to prepare some excerpts and to send videos in and to write reflections and do some writing about the Friday series and things. And so we have those 2 tracks going at the same time.
That's great. Claire, I'd love to ask you a couple of questions, specifically about the audition process to get into USO. How is it different this year compared to last year?
Yeah, so in a regular year, we would get excerpts in July sometime, usually like early to mid-July. And then we would have auditions around the end of August and into early September. And this year it's been slightly different that instead of doing an actual live audition, we record all of the excerpts in one take and then send that in as our audition. So it's a little different. And yeah, so that's generally the audition process.
Right. Yeah. Normally, again, you know, there's a week, the first week of school, or when auditions take place, and so everyone in the School of Music basically who wants to be in an ensemble comes on audition for us, the ensemble faculty, and then you know, so it's pretty quick actually. It's like, you know, in and out. But this year it was all virtual for obvious reasons, you know, and then, you know, there's some great pluses and minuses with that. You know, it's nice to, anyway, there are positives and negatives about it. I mean, I love hearing people live and experiencing their sound and being in the same room. I mean, that's a really important thing. But you also, you know, have the ability to go back and look at auditions when they're online, and, you know, and be maybe more precise, or if there are questions or anything, you know, so yeah, so.
Absolutely. Claire, how is the rehearsal experience different from a student perspective? Obviously, you know, there's the social distancing and all of the steps that we're taking for safety's sake, but in terms of the camaraderie sort of among the USO, how has that been in terms of this semester?
Yeah, for sure. This semester it's been quite different, I think, just because we're segmented into different small groups and we don't get to see the other groups just because of the restrictions surrounding that. So I think in a sense each group has become a little more close-knit because of that, which has its pros and cons, just because, like, again, we're not able to see others in the rest of the in-person USO pool. But also, yeah, you get to know people better in your group, maybe that people you haven't met before, or maybe you've seen but haven't had real conversations with, or haven't actually met. And so that's been a really great thing. And yeah, so, like, obviously there's all that social distancing and everything, but I still think, despite all of that, and I think actually because of that, we've been able to have a closer experience with one another. And it means that much more because we're there in person. Mm-hmm. And you really get to see it as, like, more of a privilege than something that you just go and do. So that's been really special.
And Claire, do you have a favorite piece that you've played in USO?
Yeah, my freshman year, I played Der Rosenkavalier by Strauss, and I played E-flat on that. And I just remember that concert being really special, just because of all of that, all the hard work and that growth that happened in that cycle. That was the first cycle I had been in at the U, and it was my first 3 weeks at the U as a freshman. And so, yeah, it was, yeah, especially myself and the other clarinetists, like, we grew so much together, and we were able to really form this really close bond through that project. And yeah, that concert there is just extra special. And the piece itself is so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
What an amazing piece to be introduced, you know. I mean, to be in the middle of all that sound, man. I know it's intoxicating, you know. And that piece especially is just like, oh my God, you know. Mm-hmm. So great. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
So now we're going to transition to talk about the campus orchestras. We actually have 3 different campus orchestras, and this semester they are meeting in person. Campus orchestra is a non-auditioned ensemble. They are open to students of varied majors within the university and provide opportunities to explore orchestral music and collaborate with guest musicians and other university ensembles. Under normal circumstances, each campus orchestra rehearses once per week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings, and they perform concerts in Ted Mann Concert Hall twice each semester. Although a minimum level of competence is expected, as this adds to the student's overall orchestra experience, a formal audition is not required. So there's 3 different groups: the Maroon Campus Orchestra, North Star Philharmonia, and Gold Campus Orchestra. And this semester, it's similar to USO, in person or online track. David is one of our 3 graduate assistants in orchestral conducting. So David, do you want to talk a little bit about serving as the instructor in those classes?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So campus orchestra, we try to make it about the most providing the most enriching musical experience that we can, and obviously with the challenges that COVID gives us, it made us really consider like how exactly we're gonna program things, because usually, you know, with for example, with Maroon and North Star, I don't know if Sunny or Elise have been. I think Elise, you're playing in North Star, right? I don't remember if y'all have been in like Maroon, where it's like in previous semesters we've had maybe 90 players, 100 players, even sometimes. You know, like to go from that to having to split ensembles into maybe 20 players. You know, that's been a big challenge. And also, we don't know who necessarily enrolls because it's open for everybody, and we welcome everybody because that's what we're all about. And so all of a sudden, maybe your orchestra has like a single trumpet and a single bassoon, and it's like, okay, what do you do? You know, like or maybe we don't have any violas, so we're scrambling to see if anybody's willing to, you know, help us out from a different. And even our Monday orchestra, we had to split into 2, and therefore, like they are playing each orchestra is playing their own separate repertoire. So we. eh, the results are, I think, actually pretty great, to be honest, you know, because I think we've had the most varied repertoire that we've had in a long time. Usually, because we have a lineup of symphonies, and which makes sense. But this year, like we have like concerto grossos. We have there's a Mozart piece that's it's a, I think, a nocturne or a divertimento. I can't remember which one. That even each of the soloists, it's like a concerto grosso style. Each of the soloists have their own cadenza. So that we have a bassist playing like her own cadenza for, so it's, you know, it's putting a spotlight on people that otherwise might not have the spotlight on, and I think it's been a great challenge for them, but they've risen up to the challenge. And I also, for Gold, I'm very proud to say that we're doing our second Costa Rican piece in a row. Like last semester, we did Benjamin Gutierrez, and this semester we're doing the same composer again because of the instrumental, like because of the instrumental needs. So it just worked out great.
Besides repertoire, is there anything new or different that you're doing in terms of like teaching or curriculum, or even like how the musicians like get to know each other in the group? Anything else that's new this semester that you haven't tried before?
Well, a couple things that we've been forced to do because of the weather or because of COVID, is to have Zoom sessions, of course, and we also have the online only tracking, which we've actually had a pretty fun semester with. I can speak about that in a little bit, but every time that we haven't been able to meet in person, we've tried to meet online, and people get to talk about stuff that they otherwise wouldn't. Like we have a bunch of space engineers, we have a bunch of chemistry majors, and well, like Elise and Sunny, either of you or both of you can speak on this maybe a little in more depth. Like the experience of maybe taking a couple hours of the week to do classical music is, I think, something irreplaceable almost. And in that sense, giving the platform to the students to talk about what music they like, their reactions to this or that, hearing them play like online. We've done a couple virtual performances already, and the first one was like they had to record themselves, and the second one was more collaborative and more we did a Terry Riley in C, which requires all the instrumentalists to play their own, like they select like certain measures and just play that, and everybody putting it together has been just mind-blowing, to be honest. I think people have to like make it kind of communal.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah, let's go to Sunny. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience in campus orchestra, just how many semesters you've played, and why did you choose to participate this semester?
Yeah, so this is my 5th semester in campus orchestra, and I guess every single time I registered, it kind of is a stress reliever for me to, take out my instrument, even just like once a week for 2 hours, because my major is something that's not even close to music. I'm looking at a calculator all day usually. So, I mean, just like being able to take out my violin and just like looking at it, because I've spent so much time throughout my life, like with my instrument. So I feel like taking that time, even if you're stressed, just taking those 2 hours every week. And like David said, everyone's welcome. So, and you really feel that. Like, you don't, it's not an auditioned group. Everyone's from different majors, everyone studies different things. And it's just kind of cool to see, like, how many people really appreciate music. And yeah, it's just a really big stress reliever for me.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, like you said, just the sheer diversity of like all these different people that are from all across campus descending into Ferguson Hall to play music together and kind of find a sense of community, and that shared passion is really cool. I mean, how do you balance participating in music with your other classes? I mean, do you feel like it's pretty manageable because it's just that one night a week?
Yeah, I feel like there were definitely some nights where I, could have chosen homework over spending 2 hours playing my instrument. And I guess like I lived on East Bank and Ferguson is on West Bank, so taking that extra like 30 minutes of travel time was hard at times. But then after, playing for 2 hours, I was really glad that I went that day because I was stressed, and it just like you kind of forget about everything else and you just play, and then everything is better.
For sure. I felt that too. Like, oh, I have to do this. And then at the end, you're like, I'm so glad I did that. So I can relate to that. Elise, do you want to talk about your experience in campus orchestra and just how long you've participated and why you decided to sign up this semester?
Yeah, so I've been in campus orchestra. This is my fourth semester. I joined the second semester of my freshman year, mostly because I was really involved in orchestra in high school and I made a lot of really good connections, like a lot of people that I'm still really good friends with. I met through orchestra in high school and I was hoping to be able to partially, I mean, of course, it was just because I missed playing music in like an organized setting with a big group of people, but I missed being able to have just a group of people that I was able to connect with just through music. And that's really what campus orchestra has provided me with. And I think, just as Sunny was saying, it's totally a huge stress reliever when it's just a once a week kind of activity where everybody is there from different majors and it's not super intense. You know, it just kind of gives you a break during the week. And this semester I was worried when I heard about everything going online. I was so worried that we weren't going to be able to meet anymore, but it was a huge relief to hear that we'd be able to still do socially distanced orchestra rehearsals. And it's been a really cool experience to see how that's been able to work even through all of the COVID stuff that's been going on for the last couple months.
I actually have a follow-up question for you, Elise. You mentioned that the first time you played in campus orchestra was your second semester of your freshman year. So I'm just curious, your first semester, were you like, I just need to get acclimated to college? And did you even consider doing music that first semester?
If I'm being completely honest, I didn't realize that there was an orchestra for non-music majors. I mentioned it to my advisor, like when we met before that second semester, I was like, I really miss being in music. And he was like, well, you know, you could try this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I didn't do that last semester. So once I found out that campus orchestra was a thing, I was totally in.
That's great. I mean, honesty is a good thing. And that's partially why we're doing this tonight, is people can realize like there is an option. You don't have to be a music major. So that's really good. Do you have a favorite piece that you've played in campus orchestra throughout your whole time?
The Gutierrez, the composer that David mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed that one last spring semester. That was probably my favorite concert that I've had in all of my campus orchestra history.
Great. And I realized I didn't get to ask Sunny. Sunny, do you have a favorite piece?
I was gonna say the same thing. I think it's because, I mean, David is so passionate about that artist, and he kind of like brings out the passion in us too, I guess, because like, I don't know about you, Elise, but I've never heard of that composer. So it was just really cool to play something that I've never like heard before.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It was cool to play someone that I'd never heard of, and from playing music from a part of the world that's not really mainstream in the world of orchestral music was really cool.
Oh, I feel enormously flattered. I'm so glad. Thank you so much, guys.
I don't know if we explicitly said it, but David, you are from Costa Rica, right?
That's right. Yeah, born and raised in Costa Rica,
And
and
so,
now spent, I guess, a fifth of my life here living in Minnesota, if you can believe that. So yeah, now
and so
college.
how
Yeah.
did you first get introduced to that composer?
I know Benjamin Gutierrez. Like, actually, he's like this like 90 something year old pianist, and he was commissioned originally. He studied with Carlos Chavez, I think, in Mexico, and came back to Costa Rica and started just teaching. And he was one of the music directors, or rather the composer in residence, when my violin teacher from Costa Rica was playing. And that's kind of how I got to like be in the circle. And through the last few years, I've been, just getting to know more people. And one day, I actually got to meet him, and he just told me about those pieces that like we did very slow, almost like barber adagio like music. And both of them, he said like, yeah, I was just improvising, and like I just thought I should write this for strings.
We have a little bit of time here, David. I'm curious, how did you journey from Costa Rica to the University of Minnesota? Like, sounds pretty random.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a blessing, honestly, and it's been an unbelievable ride because now I'm working with Master Smith, and it's honestly like been my childhood dream to be, an orchestral conductor. Like, I kid you not, I was like that nerdy kid. So, um, my violin teacher in Costa Rica used to teach at this music festival in Tennessee called Swanee Summer Music Festival. And actually, just so happens that my violin teacher now, Sally O'Reilly, used to teach there because she was in Baton Rouge teaching. But even Maestro Smith has taught at Swanee, I think, at some point. So when I went to Swanee because of my violin teacher, I met a violinist from Minnesota Orchestra, Jonathan Magnus, who then recommended me to study with Sally. And that's the short story, that short version of the story. But it was more of a thing that Minnesota found me more than I found. I had never. The only thing I knew about this place was the snow, but I mean, the first thing I did was when I heard University of Minnesota was look up the School of Music on the website and look up the faculty, and I read Sally's resume, obviously, and I read Maestro's resume, and I was like, if this is not if this is not the place for me to grow, I don't know what is, and to be honest, like it's been pretty surreal to be able to actually, go through all of this and be here even through COVID. Yeah, so yeah, that's I guess that's my story.
And when
Maestro, I had a
oh,
couple of questions for you since we have a little bit of time here. I saw that there was a furry family member that joined you. Wondering if you'd like to introduce.
Yes. Well, this is Cecilia, who's a schnauzer. We have two schnauzers. This is she's the older one. She's 9. Patron saint of music, is Saint Cecilia. So that's how she got her name. And her little sister Freya is 2 years old. So they've been out helping shovel snow, which they enjoy doing very much. So.
That's great. And we got an opportunity to ask the students what their favorite experience was in USO. Do you have any pieces that you look at as some of your favorites that you've conducted at the U?
Yeah, I think I started in 2008, so it's been a while. We've had the opportunity to explore, great literature. Claire mentioned Rosenkavalier. That's one of the highlights for sure. We did Mahler Symphony No. 2 for the reopening of Northrop. That was a great concert. I remember Mahler 3, Beethoven 9 we've done. It's a bit of a cliche, but every year is different, and the students are different, and the strings. We did a Mahler 9th Symphony, which was really memorable. Shostakovich 7 even last year, was a really great experience. We had some side-by-side experiences with the Minnesota Orchestra. Minnesota Orchestra colleagues come in and do sectionals sometimes. They're faculty members who are members of the Minnesota Orchestra. So that's another element of the USO experience that shouldn't go unmentioned.
I have a
I don't know.
question. I have a
sure.
quick question about that. Any of the students on the panel, have you worked with any Minnesota Orchestra musicians during your time here? This might be more for David or Claire.
Yeah, I have. I worked with Gabby. He's the principal clarinetist of the Minnesota Orchestra.
Also from Costa Rica.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and that was a really cool experience. I definitely learned a lot, and I think there is someone that there's somebody else I can't remember, but I think yes, he was the main person that I worked with last year in a section.
And that was that the side by side for the Shostakovich, or
that was a separate sectional, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a whole sectional program, a whole partnership with the Minnesota Orchestra. Usually it depends on the schedule and stuff, but usually it's once per concert cycle. One of the rehearsals will be a sectional with a member of the Minnesota Orchestra, and that's a great thing, and that's one of the advantages of being in a city like Minneapolis, is that there's the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, there's the Minnesota Orchestra, and so for people interested in orchestral music, I mean, there's so many. There are too many concerts to go to. Actually, you have to kind of decide. If like, do I stay home and practice, or do I go to a concert? There's like too many options, which is a nice problem to have.
Absolutely. So we're coming to the end of our time here, and I just wanted to know, Maestro, if you have any sort of words to wrap up our conversation, or things to look forward to as we look to the future of USO.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't just say USO, but campus orchestra as well. I mean, I have to say, I go to campus orchestra concerts, and, they are among the most well-attended and like the most high energy. I mean, the campus orchestra, the members of the campus orchestra love, if I can speak for them, I'm seeing nodding, so that's good. I mean, they love what they're doing, and they're passionate about it, and they invite their friends, and it's a big deal. It's really great. So those 2 concerts per semester with campus orchestra are great. USO is, I mean, we work on a very high level, and we embrace that, and everybody works really hard, and they love the challenge of it. And I think there's a great sense of pride and a great sense of accomplishment when we, tackle these incredible pieces of music. And, we dwell in a very special world in the orchestra world. And, I think Claire said that, it's like, it reminds you what a privilege it is to I'm not a genius, but Mozart and Bach and Beethoven and Bartok, these are geniuses. And so we can learn from them, and we can kind of dwell in this world of genius and of artistic, integrity and of artistic and passionate artistic offerings. And it's just such a privilege to be able to dwell in that world. And we take it very seriously. I mean, we don't take ourselves seriously, but we take our art very seriously. And I think it's a really nice combination. And I think a really great culture in the USO of really wanting to play on a high level, and everybody really working hard to achieve that.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, so that wraps up our time. Next Thursday, November 19th, we will be covering opera from 7 to 8 p.m. So if you're interested in conversations like this, you can tune in again next week. Natalie, you want to tell them what you've got going?
Yeah, absolutely. So every week on Thursdays from 11 to 12, I host a admissions information session. So the 2021 admission cycle is a little bit different. And so we're providing a space for folks to ask questions and sort of highlighting different sections and what they're expecting out of the recorded auditions that we're requiring this time around. So yeah, every Thursday, tune in for one of those if you've got any questions about the admissions process. One other thing that we'd like to remind you to do is to follow @UMN Music on social media. We'd love to connect with others in the music community, and this is the best way to receive up-to-date information about our news and events. And also, if you selected yes about receiving news and events via the email, your email address has been added to our list.
So once again, thank you to all of our panelists tonight, especially the students. I know it's busy. It just feels like it's kind of crunch time with recitals and finals and all the things. So we really appreciate your time. Again, this will be posted on the School of Music YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining us, and go Gophers.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.